Ok, donc là, on va parler des phrases principalement avec si. So si clauses, sentences with if. So this is similar to English. We've got a couple of different kinds of sentences. One of those involves the conditionnel. So before we do anything else, we should just review how to form the conditional. So we saw the future a few weeks ago, and remember the conditional is exactly like the future, except for the endings are a little different, but the base, the stem, is exactly the same as the future. So normally you take the whole infinitive of a verb. If it's a verb that ends with re, you'll just take off the e. We talked about when we did the future some of those irregular verbs like aller, the stem is ir, être, the stem is ser, etc., etc. So those are all exactly the same. The thing that's different is the endings. So for the future, we had endings that looked a lot like avoir. Here for the conditional, our endings are going to be exactly the same as the imperfect. So what's the difference with the imperfect? It's the base. You have the whole infinitive. AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. For example, je mangerai, I would eat. I think just be careful. That one sounds the same, the je form in the conditional in the future, je mangerai, but all the other ones should be sounding different. So, and that's the only one where we might have some confusion. So when do we use this? This is what would theoretically happen. Be careful, it's not would as in like would in the past. Every summer we would go to Normandy. That's something else. That's the imperfect. But would, if you could say a theoretical would, what would you do if something else happened? Which is why it's going to be helpful with those if sentences. So just keep that in mind. We'll come back to that in a second. And let's skip ahead to 117 and looking at the different kinds of if-then sentences, the different kinds of cause and effect sentences. We've got two main types that we're going to talk about so far, and they are exactly like English. So I think this is one, if you can think about what the tenses sound like in English, they're going to be the same. If something happens in the present, then the result will be in the future, just like in English. If you leave, present, if, your parents will get angry, future. So if something happens in the present, a future thing will happen. Si tu t'en vas, tes parents se fâcheront. Si Marc donne, au présent, donne, des fleurs à Sophie, résultat au futur, elle sera contente. She will be happy. So, and that again is just like English. Keep that in mind. Turning the page there to the 118. This is especially applicable for this week. Si and the past, if something happened, something else would happen, conditional. So these are more theoretical situations. If he spoke Spanish, he would get used to life in Mexico. S'il parlait espagnol, il s'habituerait à la vie mexicaine. He doesn't, he's probably not going to, it's very theoretical, but if he did, then this would be the result. And again, there's just imperfect, there's our conditional. It's the whole infinitive, our ER ending, plus the imparfait ending. If this cat bit me, I would bring him back to the pound. So that's, again, a theoretical. The cat probably won't bite me. But if he did, and be careful, this past tense, we always want to put that in the imperfect past in French for these sentences. So you might be tempted by the passé composé in a sentence like that, but just imperfect. You could have the same sentence, and if it were a little more likely, if your cat is a biter, and you say, if this cat bites me one more time, I will bring him back to the pound. That's the future present construction. So, same sentence, just a little bit different idea. If you remember the old song, If I Had $1 Million, Bare Naked Ladies, that is an awesome example of the if clauses with the conditional. If I won the lottery, I would do X, Y, or Z. I'm probably not going to win the lottery, but what I would do. If I had So there's our past tense. $1 million. I would buy you an emu. So be careful. Had has to be the imperfect. Don't put the passé composé. Si j'avais, je t'achèterais. So there's our conditional. We've got the whole infinitive for our base. We've got our ER and then our conditional ending, which is the same as our imperfect ending. There again, it's not like the stuff we saw with the future a few weeks ago that was kind of tricky. It's the same as English, so just take your time, translate it, and you'll be good. Donc là, les exercices de devoir. Là, donc on a eu l'exercice J à la page 118. Je redescends là. So theoretical situations, all these things that are wrong with Jean-Pierre. So they tell you what's wrong with him and what's going on, and you're going to fix it. Jean-Pierre ne lit jamais le journal, il ne sait pas ce qui se passe dans le monde. He doesn't read the newspaper, he doesn't know what's going on in the world. You want to say, if he read the paper, past, imparfait, lisez, he would know, conditional. Remember, savoir is sort, that's kind of a weird one. Il saurait. They said ce qui se passe. I feel like it would even be better to say he would know what was going on in the world, to say that part in the past as well, but that doesn't really matter. So let's do a couple together. Le numéro 1, Jean-Pierre ne s'habille pas bien, les autres étudiants se moquent de lui. So he doesn't dress well, the other kids make fun of him. We want to say if he dressed well in the past, the other kids wouldn't make fun of him anymore, conditional. So we want to do dressed in the imperfect first. So si Jean-Pierre s'habillait bien, imperfect, the other kids wouldn't make fun, so conditional. So take our infinitive and add our ending. Be careful, remember to put your plural ending. Ne se moquerait pas de lui. Ça va un peu? Le 2, Jean-Pierre ne fait pas de sport, il ne connaît pas beaucoup de monde. So he doesn't do sports, he doesn't know a lot of people. If he played sports, past, he would know a lot of people. So the if part is going to be in the past. S'il faisait du sport, he would know, il connaîtrait beaucoup de monde. So again, our verb is connaître. We can put our little hat on the I. Bon. Just take off the E, and then you've got your base, then you've got your infinitive there. Allez, le 3, là. Non, le 3, je vous laisse terminer, and we'll go on to the next one there. Okay, so the next thing we have to talk about are a couple of compound tenses. The first is the future perfect, le futur intérieur. So in English, this is like saying you will have done something. I don't think it's super common in English. I honestly wouldn't worry too much about this one. The thing we just did, the C clauses, is much more important. But it is good to know that it exists. So what are we doing? We're taking the future form of your helping verb of avoir or être and the past participle. Just like any other, passé composé or any other compound tense, if it's an être verb, it's still an être verb. They still need to agree in number and gender. When would you use this? Well, I feel like in English we wouldn't say it very much, but so maybe if two things are happening in the future and one before the other, something will have happened probably before the other thing happens. The word before would be key. I think the book gives us j'aurai fini vers 5 heures du soir. I'll have finished around 5 p.m. Elle sera arrivée avant nous. She'll have arrived before us. I think in English, honestly, we'd probably just use the future here, but in French we could use this futur intérieur. Probably, though, it can be interchangeable with the future sometimes. And one other thing to point out, a few weeks ago when we did those other words that tell you to take the future, like quand, lorsque, aussitôt que, dès que, après que, you could also use the futur intérieur after those if it makes sense. So I'll call you when the letter arrives. In English, we'd say this first part in the future, but this part in the present. Remember, in French, we said we use the future for this part. Je te téléphonerai quand la lettre arrivera. Another option, you could use the future antérieur, because if you think about it, this thing will happen in the future, but a little before this thing. Quand la lettre sera arrivée, when the letter will have arrived. I think, again, in English, we probably would never talk like that, but maybe, seniors, you could think about what will have happened by the time you graduate. Before I graduate, I will have gone to prom, I will have gotten into college, I will have all the positive things that are coming for you guys. I think thinking of like by the time something happens, something else will have happened could be helpful. So let's take a look at that exercise F. When something happens, it will be too late. So let's have a look here. So they give you just the verbs. So when you will arrive when I will have already gone out. And I feel like they don't tell you already, but you could almost put an already in these. So the first part we're doing just in the future. Tu arriveras, you will arrive. Quand je serai sorti, when I will have already gone out. So this second part of the sentence is also happening in the future, but a little before the first one. How about the numéro 1? So he'll offer to help when I'll have finished, when I'll have already finished. Il m'offrira, just regular future, un coup de main quand j'aurai fini. So there's our future antérieur. Take the future, aurait, of avoir, of your helping verb, and then just regular old past participle. Et le numéro 2, she will ring the doorbell when we will have gone to bed. Elle sonnera, futur, à la porte quand, so watch out, reflexive verb takes être, nous nous serons couchés, and let's make it agree. So again, that idea of will have gone to bed, and then this other thing will happen afterwards. And then one more compound tense, the conditionnel passé, the past conditional. So this one may be a little bit more useful than the futur antérieur, saying what would have happened if things had worked out differently. So you can hear it. This is going to be one more kind of C clause. So what would have happened? What are we doing? We're taking the conditional of the helping verb this time, plus your past participle. So again, conditional of être, avoir, j'aurais mangé, I would have eaten something. You've got to use this one with the C clause. If you had given me, I don't know, some cookies, I would have eaten them. It's got to be, it's very conditional, right? Like if you're a rueful, regretful person and you're saying you wish things had worked out differently in the past. If things had worked out differently, we would have done something, but of course we didn't. So it's a C clause. We need two parts. What's the first part? The first part is the pluperfect. Remember the plus que parfait? So what is that? Not to throw too many tenses at you, but that's the had part. If he had arrived, if things had happened, then the result clause, that's going to be our new conditionnel passé. We would have done something. So you want that idea of would, conditional of your helping verb. S'il était arrivé, nous aurions dîné ensemble. If he had arrived, we would have dined, we would have eaten together. Si tu avais étudié, if you had studied, plus que parfait, plus perfect, tu aurais réussi, you would have passed your tests. So, aurait, conditional of avoir, of your helping verb. Let's take a look at that exercice K, which is awesome just because we're talking about a person named Bertha, if nothing else is good about it. So we're again being sort of regretful and weirdly like obsessed with Berthe and just want to do everything she does. So she didn't go out, but if she had gone out, pluperfect, I would have gone out as well. So you're like some sort of Berthe groupie. If she had gone out, était sortie, je serais sorti, I would have gone out. It's of course an être verb, so we'll use être. I think it's easier to hear with the avoir verbs. We'll see one of those in a second. The number 1, she didn't go into town, but if she had gone into town, pluperfect, I would have gone into town too. Si elle était allée, so there's our pluperfect, there's our, again, we're doing imperfect of the helping verb and past participle. Moi aussi, je serais allée, I would have gone. So conditional of your helping verb. Let's look at 2. I think that's a little more helpful. So she didn't buy books, but if she had bought books, I would have bought books too. Si elle avait acheté des livres, so there's our had, there's our pluperfect. Moi aussi, j'aurais acheté des livres. J'en aurais acheté. There's a really cheesy but maybe helpful Céline Dion song to teach this tense that I will try to remember to put on the website if that helps.